Welcome to Good God, conversations that matter about faith and public life. I'm your host, George Mason, and I'm delighted to welcome to our program today Hadi Jawad. Hadi is the founder and president of Human Rights Dallas. He's been a presence in the Dallas community's pursuit of social justice for a very long time. And Hadi, I'm so glad to have this conversation with you. Thank you for joining me for this time.
Well, Reverend, I'm honored to be here. I'm a big fan, as you know, and thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you. So, Hadi, if I show up at a march, I know I'm going to see you. If I show up at a rally, if I show up at any kind of event that is seeking the well-being and justice for people in our community, I know somehow you're involved. But how did that get stirred up in you? Where does it come from?
Good question. In the late 90s, I got a call from my sister, my older sister, who lives in Pakistan, which is where I was born. And she said that one of our relatives had shown up at her doorstep in Pakistan from Iraq, holding a few bags with his wife, and said that he knew that he had relatives in Karachi, Pakistan, where my sister lives, and he had left Iraq because things got so difficult and life on a daily basis became such a challenge because they had progressively sold everything that they owned, including their car, their jewelry, their home, and finally when they had nothing left, they just packed a few bags and made a trek, almost walked most of the way from Iraq to Pakistan.
Wow.
It kind of shook me up, because at that time I was like probably most American citizens, watching the Dallas Cowboys and the Texas Rangers and, enjoying life, enjoying my American dream. And, life was good for me. I had my family and, minding my own business and just carrying on with life.
Right.
But that kind of shook me up because I was hearing President Clinton at that time on TV talking about what was happening in Iraq or what the U.S. was doing to Iraq, and it was diametrically opposed to what my sister was telling me, what she had heard. So, and we all know that Mr. President Clinton had a proclivity to deviate from the truth in other aspects of his presidency also. So I began to look into it to see what was actually happening. And I was horrified. I was just absolutely horrified what U.S. policy was doing to the people of Iraq. And when I looked at the photos and pictures that were coming out of Iraq, I could see my father was born in Iraq, so I have probably the same DNA as most of the people of Iraq. And I could see the faces of my cousins, my aunts, my elders, and the faces of these Iraqi citizens. And I didn't know what to do, actually. I reached out to a few people and was directed to what used to be called the Dallas Peace Center. It does not exist anymore. And that was an organization here in our area that was actually doing some educational around that issue of what U.S. policy in terms of the sanctions that the U.S. had instigated and backed by the UN was causing the devastation. And the numbers were just horrific. When I got activated to look into the Iraq issue, already 500,000 children under the age of 5, 500,000 children under the age of 5 had died because of U.S. instigated, U.S.-backed sanctions on that country.
Wow.
So it was horrific. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't get the thought out of my head that I can just ignore that. I did. I tried to ignore it.
Yes.
What can I do? I'm just one person.
Right.
I don't have any power in this country. I'm a migrant myself. I will get targeted if I say something. Just go with the flow and let let God handle it.
Yes.
Let the country handle it. But I couldn't get it out of my mind.
Right.
Yeah, as hard as I tried to not think about it,
Right.
the call, sort of a call, kept coming back. No, you've got to do something. You have power in this country. You are a U.S. citizen. You are the citizen of one of the mightiest countries that have ever existed. The First Amendment is real. Reach out, say something, write a letter to the editor, do something. So that's how I got started,
Okay.
Reverend. And
Well, and you're still writing letters to the editor. In fact, Monday of this week, I just saw a letter that was from you about Cesar Chavez. Isn't that right?
that is correct. Yeah.
And so you were talking about, I think, his contributions. And why don't you say a word about Chavez?
Yeah, I really admire Cesar Chavez, the man, the movement, obviously, but the man. He was a very humble man, a very kind man, a very ordinary person who rose to the pinnacle of social justice and social change in this country. I feel like the way he acted, the way he behaved and conducted himself in this country brought to light the suffering of the poorest of the poor farm workers in this country, deserves a lot more respect
Yes.
than he gets.
Right.
There has been a movement to make it a national holiday on his birthday, but that has not gone very far. There are, I think, 8 states that California, for example, has a state holiday, but Texas is not there yet.
Right.
And I think that that's the least we could do here in Texas is to declare his birthday as a national holiday, so we can learn from his example. These are extraordinary human beings who teach us about ourselves and give us information about the question, who are we?
Yes.
That's a question that we must all ask. We ask ourselves, who are we? And people like Cesar Chavez and Dr. King provide us an opportunity to learn about ourselves, who we are.
Well, there's a theme here that I think you've already begun to explore, and you've done so in your own life. Who am I? What is my agency? What can I do as one person? And then you look at heroes like Cesar Chavez, Martin Luther King Jr., and others who were ordinary human beings, but who saw a need and addressed it. They stepped up. They had the courage to participate in civic life, to speak and use their voice, to organize, and to encourage others to do the same. And I think, Hadi, one of the reasons we have these conversations on Good God is because there are a lot of people who are feeling as if they are disturbed by the state of the world, by the state of their state or their community, and they don't know what to do. They feel powerless, and yet they do have power, don't they? If only they knew what to do with it. So if you were talking to them, what would you say based upon these heroes and your own experience? Where do you start?
Yeah, Congressman Al Green was in town 2 Saturdays ago.
Right,
He
for the
spoke
rally.
at the mega rally. He said something really interesting. He bellowed out in his style, holding up his cane. He said, "Don't live in fear.
Right.
Unite." That's the antidote to fear. And people are living in a lot of fear right now. Sadly, unfortunately, self-inflicted by the current administration.
Yes.
There was no need. There is no need for us. I mean, life is tough enough. Things are already hard enough with all kinds of challenges that humankind
Yes.
as a whole is facing. The existential threats of climate change, for example, and nuclear warfare, the ability for all life to be eradicated
Yes.
on the planet is real. These are two existential threats that exist in our lives, possibly for the first time. So we didn't need this additional uncertainty that has been inflicted upon not just Americans now, but the entire world. So where to start? You start with reaching out to other like-minded people. I always keep in mind Rosa Parks when I'm doing
Yes.
activism. One woman, one person. Sometimes when people have rallies, they complain that not enough people showed up, and I remind them that it took one person like Rosa Parks
Right.
to affect a monumental change
Yes.
in American society. So never underestimate your own power as an American citizen. We have a lot of power, at least so far we do.
Yes.
Who knows? God knows better what's coming down the pike. But something as simple as writing a letter to the editor, or picking up the phone and calling your congressman.
Right.
I mean, these are really simple things. I tell folks, you should call your congressman and your senator's office so much that when the person at the office picks up the phone and hears your voice, they know who it is.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah.
You should.
That's a very intimidating thing for most citizens to do. But when you do it, there's actually, in all of these offices, these are people who understand that they have a responsibility to listen to you. And it's actually a more welcoming experience most of the time than people would realize. Isn't
It really is. And they listen, and they're doing their jobs, and they
That's
do
right.
it well.
Yeah.
And the only thing we have to remember is to be civil.
That's right.
Be polite and make your point. You don't have to raise your voice. You don't have to demonize anybody.
In fact, that's exactly the problem in our culture,
Exactly.
is demonizing people. So you and I find ourselves probably most often aligned with certain kinds of political causes that have people who are on the other side, right? And we all have friends and people in our neighborhoods. And I think even if people have strong convictions on one side or the other, they fear that if they speak out, if they act, that somehow they will no longer be respectable. They won't be thought of as nice people. That they'll be viewed as agitators, as just advocating for a position puts you as the enemy to someone else. But that very mentality has to change, doesn't it? Where we have to stop viewing people as enemies and view them instead maybe as opponents of positions, but we all have human rights, right? Our common humanity has to be a basis for that. So let's talk a little bit about the Human Rights Dallas and what do you do and how do you emphasize these values?
Absolutely. Thank you, Reverend. The word that comes to our minds when we talk about these sort of interactions with other fellow human beings who might differ in opinions with us or judgments or ideas, is we have to remember not to demonize, which also means not to dehumanize
Yes,
the other person.
yes.
We don't dehumanize because all human beings have dignity.
Yes.
We're all born with dignity. Dignity overrides any distinctions of skin color or speaking different languages or having a different faith. It overrides the distinction of gender, nationality.
Right.
Dignity unifies all humankind, all of God's creation.
Yes, yes.
We all have dignity. So it's really important in the work that we're doing at Human Rights Dallas to remind folks of that, that we all have dignity. In fact, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that was written in the aftermath of the Second World War in 1948, when nations were horrified by what had just transpired,
Yes.
and said there is absolutely no way, no reason that we should continue on this path. We need to come together and
Right.
find a better way to coexist.
Yes.
And they wrote the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And the first article, the first sentence says, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and human rights.
Yes.
And if you notice, the word dignity comes before human rights.
Yes.
So we believe that human rights were created to protect human dignity.
Yes.
Dignity is the essence of human rights. So Human Rights Dallas is the brainchild of Dr. Rick Halpern, who's a co-founder, as I am. He says 17 years ago he was sitting in some meeting at SMU, as your viewers, your listeners and viewers probably know. He's the director of the SMU Human Rights Program. He's an internationally recognized authority on the death penalty, on genocide, human rights, and other matters. He said he had scribbled on his notepad, Human Rights Dallas. This is 2007 or 2008. So it was just a germ of an idea in his head, which he developed over the years and talked to me. He's been talking to me about it for 10 years or more. We need to create, so we did. We finally made this a formal entity. Our mission is, I'm going to paraphrase, is to create a culture of human rights in Dallas using education and the arts, and by fostering collaboration between civil society, local government, and the private sector.
Oh, wow, that's a lot.
It's a lot, yeah.
Yeah,
Bring these three segments of society together
Yes.
to build a culture of human rights in Dallas using education
Right.
and the arts. So we're on the track that we're on right now. Two tracks we're on right now. One of them is called Living History. Living History program attempts to bring members of a community, of a particular community that lived in Dallas, know about the history of Dallas from the 50s and 60s and 70s. Talk about their experience, what it was like to live in Dallas. Talk about where we are now, what has been the trajectory, and where we are going or where we should be going.
Right.
So we produced the first program in the Latino community last year during Hispanic Heritage Month. It was well attended at the Latino Cultural Center. Well attended, had a great panel of folks that lived in Dallas in the 50s and 60s. And one of the things that I remember at that time, one of the panelists said that they weren't allowed to speak Spanish.
Right.
They were discouraged from speaking Spanish. So I think it's important for the present generation and especially our youth to hear these from the mouths of folks that experienced that part of Dallas that not many people know about. We repeated the same format in the African American community during Black History Month in February. We repeated that again during Women's History Month last month at SMU, and we are going to recreate that same format for the Asian American community in May at SMU.
So I was at a welcoming task force meeting of the city of Dallas just the other day, and they were talking about the fact that there are about 90 languages spoken in Dallas. So people are here in Dallas from all parts, and their native, their first tongue is something other than English. And so they were talking about how to make information more accessible to more people who are in Dallas. And then, Hadi, I was talking, I was listening to a news program where the Spanish translation, the contract with the National Weather Service, for more than 20 years, they provided a Spanish translation of warnings, weather warnings to people in Spanish language. But that contract has now been canceled. And so, partly it was said that it was a budget thing, but we also know that the president has recently declared English the official language of the United States, something that, it's hard to understand why we needed, to have an executive order about that. But this is a tension we find ourselves in, right? Is some people who want a common culture where language is the one of the primary ways that you establish a common culture, and there are others who see that who argue that we can have many languages and many cultures making up this larger vision of society. What would you say to people about the relationship between honoring their language and their culture and the place that plays in human dignity?
Yeah. Well, historically speaking, the United States has been a melting pot. Mm-hmm. In that aspect is sort of a unique experiment in mm-hmm. the history of the world. Mm-hmm. So many people from such diverse parts of the world, including myself, have come to this nation. I tend to err on the side of diversity. Mm-hmm. I grew up in a city that was very diverse, mm-hmm. in Karachi, Pakistan. When I was growing up, I went to a Catholic school that was run by Jesuits, which imparted in me a remarkable appreciation and curiosity mm-hmm. For the world.
And we should say that you are a Shia Muslim.
I'm a Shia Muslim.
Right.
I remember my mother, God bless her soul, tried so hard to get me into a Catholic school. Because that was the best education available in the city at that time. Yeah. I was turned down by the first school that I went to, which was the most popular school in Karachi at that time, St. Patrick's High School. I was turned down because I was probably 6 or 7 years old, but I suffered from separation anxiety. So I would cry and act out when my mother would leave the room when I was being tested. So they turned me down. But I ended up going to St. Paul's High School. Okay. And I thank God for that. Yeah. These Jesuits just did a remarkable job of exposing us to world literature, Charles Dickens and Mark Twain, and at a very early age, Shakespeare, and alongside our own Islamic teachings. We had a teacher in school at St. Paul's who taught us Islamic ideology. Just a remarkable. Mm-hmm. I always feel, I look back at my life and I consider myself immensely fortunate that I got to reap the benefits of both East and West.
Yes.
Not only living there, but also moving here at the age of 19 and living west. So I'm living in the West. So I consider myself really great, immensely fortunate and lucky to have had this education and this experience of both living in the East and living in the West, and also the teachings of the East and the teachings of the West.
Right. Sometimes people talk about how travel is education, but it's also true that education is travel. isn't it? That you don't have to go somewhere, but if you read and if you learn about another culture, you're imagining yourself from their point of view, and you're entering into this. If we only stay within our own traditions and our own comfort zones, we don't really learn about the world very much. And so this is where that diversity comes from, I think, where we can appreciate someone else and learn about ourselves in doing so.
Absolutely. The brain, is probably the most remarkable thing that exists
Yes.
in this universe.
Right.
And I think I speak for myself. I think I have fed on diversity and
Right.
different opinions and
Right.
reading different books and learning. And I think the brain just wants to learn. It's a
Right.
continuous learning machine.
So, Hadi, we find ourselves with enormous challenges in our world right now, and I think you have always been an advocate for the pursuit of nonviolent engagement in justice work. What are some of the keys to learning this disciplined approach to nonviolent advocacy? What would you say to people?
Yeah, I think paying attention to our own selves is very important. Self-awareness. Most of us will react to stressful, difficult situations with fear or anger.
Okay.
And those are God-given emotions. Fear is there to alert us to danger,
Yes.
so we can protect ourselves.
Right.
But we end up letting fear own us.
Ah, right. Right.
And unscrupulous politicians
Yes.
know how to
Stoke the fear.
stoke the fear, and
yes.
and we see a lot of that.
Yes.
We're seeing a lot of that around in our country and around the world. So the Sufis who I study, Pakistan is a land is an area of the world very famous for Sufis, particularly the region that I was raised in, Sindh, right on the Arabian Sea, part of the Indian Ocean, is called the land of the mystics. So heavily influenced by their thinking, and some of the stuff they said sounds simplistic, but they said, for example, whatever the question, love is the answer.
Yes, right. Right.
That's in line with the teachings of
Yes.
Jesus Christ and
Right.
Mahatma Gandhi and Prophet Muhammad. And so, what do you say to people? Step back, take a step back. Use nonviolence. Nonviolence is a well-known strategy to bring about lasting, sustaining change. Mahatma Gandhi took down the world's only superpower.
Yes.
Of his
British
time,
Empire. Yeah. Incredible.
using nonviolent methods.
Right. Right. Exactly.
And
And Dr. King learned from him as well.
Dr. King learned from him.
Exactly.
And
So.
that's the kind of, we are hearing right now that there's going to be suffering in the actions that the administration is doing, but this is self-inflicted suffering that we're witnessing
Yes.
right now.
Right.
People who are nonviolent also suffer, but they
Yes.
suffer for a different reason. They
Yes,
suffer
and
for a different cause.
And they don't celebrate the suffering of others. They in fact suffer on behalf of others, which is the real distinction, isn't it?
That is the distinction. Yeah,
right.
There's something to be said about that. Life is difficult. We all suffer. Everybody suffers in life, but there's something to be said about inflicting unnecessary suffering on others, and getting some kind of satisfaction out of seeing other people suffer. There's something diabolical about that.
So you talked a bit about fear being a motivating factor for people, and I've been told that the hypothalamus, the bottom part, the brainstem, is that stimulus response part of us that operates off of emotion. And again, as you say, emotion is not a bad thing, and fear has a place in our lives, but it tends to then your reaction to that is always either fight or flight or freeze, right? That's pretty much the breadth of responses that you can have to that. Mm-hmm. But the human brain, that transcends the reptilian and mammalian brain, the human brain gives us the ability to stop and stand over against our feelings and ask ourselves the question, how should I respond to this feeling that I have? And so taking a breath, being able to think and make a decision about fear might lead us, in fact, to act to self-sacrifice instead of self-preserve, right? To stand up for someone else, to be an advocate, an ally, and accept some responsibility for that. And this is what we're calling people to, isn't it? I mean, it's to be part of the human community and to join people together so that there's a sense of goodwill and common good that comes out of this.
Absolutely. There's a whole lot more to the emotional self than just fear and anger.
Yes.
We also have in us, in our brains, the capacity to for compassion and,
Yes.
and mercy and justice.
Good.
and companionship and camaraderie and dignity. I mean, the list goes on and on and
Yes.
on. But we tend to be trapped in these two emotions of fear and anger,
Right.
Repeatedly all the time.
Right.
And in the hands of unscrupulous politicians, we just become puppets.
Well, you are no puppet, my friend, and you have cultivated this spirit of love and of power to be used on behalf of others instead of against them. And we thank you for all of your work in the community and abroad. And I want to encourage people to look at Human Rights Dallas. You can go to the website and you can learn more and participate. Thank you for all that you do, Hadi. It's good to be a partner with you in our community.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for having me. It's
All
a
right.
pleasure.
Terrific. Thank you.